Alright, so in the last video, I showed you that how you can set up your CMPedometer, run your application, which will display the number of steps in your SwiftUI application. This is great, but how can we take this one step further? What if we wanted to show the number of steps in the form of a widget so that it's always available? In order to get started, I'm just going to go ahead to Editor, add a new target, and I will go ahead and add a widget. So let's go ahead and search for widget extension, and here we go. So for the name of the widget, I'm just going to use a just walking, and that's perfectly fine. And now I'm going to say finish. So it's going to add just walking widget for our application. So here is it, just walking. And it contains a lot of code. You can see all the default code that comes with the widget. Now, one of the things that we have to do is we need to first of all obviously display the widget. We have to get the number of steps from our application from over here, and we need to put those number of steps somewhere so that it can be shared with the widget also. And that place is user defaults. So I'm going to go over to my actual project, and I'm going to select iOS. Let's go ahead and select signing and capabilities. Let's go ahead and select the add button, and I can go ahead and add an app group. Let's double click on that. The app group is going to allow us to share the user defaults or whatever we stored in user defaults between the app, which is iOS app in SwiftUI, and the widget. Now over here you have option to select the already configured or already created app groups, or you can add a new one. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new one, and I will call it group.com.azam_. And now we can just say anything you want. I'm just going to say just walking. And let's go ahead and add that. It is going to take a little bit of time, but it is finally hopefully going to add, and there we go, it's added. We have to do the same exact thing for the widget target. So let's go ahead and select the just walking extension. And once again, we will go ahead and click on the add button, app groups. And we should be able to see the app group right over here somewhere. Let's see if we can find it. So we can see different groups being added. I don't know if I can see the actual app group that I wanted to add, but let's go ahead and add the new one. com.azam_just_walking. It has to be exactly the same as before. So most probably it will be a good idea that if you have copied it from the iOS target and you're simply pasting it over here. And there we go. So we have added the same app group for our just walking extension. And if you go to the iOS extension, you can see it's the same exact thing. Group.com.azam_just_walking and group.com.azam_just_walking. Great. So now we have the same groups for both of them. The next thing that we want to do is from our application, from our actual iOS application, we want a way to put the number of steps into the user defaults. And one of the new things in iOS 14 is the use of something called app storage, which basically means that it is going to be adding or creating a particular key, in this case step count, and whatever we say, it's going to be creating a NS user default key called step count, and it's going to be storing the value in there. So it's much easier to use the app storage property wrapper as compared to creating user default.standard. Put the value and all that stuff. We also do have to specify the store user defaults, and we have to provide the suite name. And this is because we are trying to share the user defaults with another suite. And they are shared using the name of the group. which you should remember now, it is group.azamsharp.justWalking. The variable that we're going to use will be called step count, and initial value of that will be equals to 0. All right. Now, we still need to populate our step count. So whenever we get the count value, we should update the step count. So if we scroll down, you will see that right over here in the update UI function, this is where we are getting the step count. So we can assign it over here. Step count equals to data.number of steps dot int value. This basically means that when the app actually gets the data from doing the pedometer.query pedometer data for the last 7 days, once we have the data, we are going to assign it to step count, which is going to store it in the NS user defaults. This means it is persisted and we can take it out anytime that we want. And then using the app storage with the user default suite name, we will be able to take it out and display it in the widget, which is called JustWalking widget. Right now, our widget contains all the code that has already been written for us. We don't really want to use any of that stuff, so I'm just going to remove all of it. If you don't know how to make a widget, then check out the YouTube description of this video, and I will add a link to my previous video where I have shown that how you can create a widget. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the widget. The first thing we need is we need to create a timeline entry, which will contain the data that we want to display in the widget. So I'm simply going to say struct step entry, and this will be a timeline entry. So I'm just going to call it timeline entry. The timeline entry protocol defines that we must implement the date. So let's go ahead and implement the date, which is date equals to just the date of current time. And I'm going to go ahead and also create something called a step count, or we can just call it steps, which will be integer. Okay, so this is our step entry. That's great. The second thing that we need to create is a provider. So let's go ahead and create a provider, which will be a timeline provider. In order to conform to the timeline provider, we must provide something called a snapshot. And the other function will be the actual timeline. Let's move to the snapshot. The snapshot is something that person will see when they are trying to look at the widget and trying to drag and drop the widget into their home screen. And what I want to do is in the snapshot, I want to provide them with the actual data, which is stored in the app store or app storage in the user defaults. So we need to find a way over here to access our user defaults. Since they share the same exact app storage or the user defaults, the suite name, I can actually simply use app storage and type in the same exact key that we provided earlier, which is step count, store, which will be a user defaults, and the same exact suite name, which in this case is group.com.azamsharp.justWalking. And we will go ahead and say steps, or in this case step count, integer equals to 0. So by default the value will be 0, but if there is any other value which is already stored in the user defaults, then it will be updated to that. Now inside the snapshot, we can go ahead and create an instance of the step entry. So I'm just going to say entry equals to step entry, and I will pass in the steps, which in this case will be step count. So I'll just say step count. And then I will fire the completion and pass in the entry. All right. The other thing that we need to implement is obviously the timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and say entry equals to step entry, And then I'm going to pass in the steps, which in this case will be, again, step count. And finally, I will go ahead and fire the completion handler, in which I will provide a timeline, which takes in entries. And I'm going to just pass in the entry that I have. And for the policy, I'm just going to say never, which means that the data will never be refreshed. Let's go ahead and build this. Okay, so we have a couple of problems over here. Let's go ahead and try to fix those problems. The entry type, so in this case, the entry type is step entry, so let's go ahead and fix that. Step entry. Let's go ahead and build it. We still are missing the main function actually, or the main starting point of the widget, and we are also missing the actual user interface for the widget. The user interface of the widget will be pretty simple, but you can make it complicated or more advanced if you want to. But right now, we are simply saying step view, which is going to be entry, and we are simply going to display a text, which is going to display a step count, and that's it. The final thing that we need to do is we need to provide, let's go ahead and fix this to steps, the main entry point of the widget. So I'm going to create a struct step widget, which is going to be using the widget, and I'm going to decorate this with main. This means this is the starting point of the widget. Private let kind equals to step widget. That's a unique name for the particular widget. The widget should have a property called body, which is going to return a widget configuration. This can be an intent configuration, but we are just going to use it as static configuration. So static configuration is fine. And let's go ahead and pass in all the things. For a unique name for the widget, we're just going to say kind. Provider will be simply the provider. The placeholder will be text, and I will simply call it step count. So placeholder will be displayed if the actual snapshot is taking a while, then the placeholder will be displayed at that point. And then we can go ahead and say entry, and we can pass in the actual step view. So step view and passing in the entry, which we're getting from over there. So this will create an actual widget for us. All right. Now let's go ahead and run it and see what the widget actually looks like. Go ahead and run our app first in our iPhone. So I'm going to go ahead and run the app. And it will simply display the number of steps that we have taken. Let's make sure that the app is running. There we go, it's launching. And this is the app, not the widget. So it should just display our number of steps. Okay, 5,077, 1.94 miles. Great. Now I can go ahead and stop the app, and let's go ahead and run the actual widget. So I'm going to select the widget target, and I'm going to go ahead and run it on the phone. There are ways to also add the widget dynamically, I mean not dynamically, but by adding it through the menu. But now you can see right over here, we have added the widget and it says 5077. And if I click on the widget, I can open it up and it opens up the app. Now, one of the things that you might be wondering is that what happens if the actual steps are incremented? So if the actual steps are incremented, then right now it's still going to show you the old steps. And the reason is that it's not really updating the steps at that moment, because we explicitly said that we will not be polling for new steps. So if you do want the steps to be updated, you will change that to something else, let's say at end, which means that it's always going to be asking for, hey, do you have new steps? Do you have new steps? And so on. But you and I both know that we will not really have any steps. I mean, I'm not really walking right now. So how can we fake it? So let's go over here and I will go, and this is obviously, you don't have to do this. I'm just trying to show you that this can be done. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just going to create randomized steps. So I'm just going to say over here, update steps or something. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so not sure why it's complaining over here. Let's go ahead and build this. So I'm creating a button and I'm calling it update steps, and I'm doing that because I actually want to update or get some random steps. And what we can do is we can simply put the steps into something called a step count. So step count equals to, and now I can go ahead and create those steps. So integer.random, and I can just get some random steps between two different numbers. So let's say I want to get steps between 5,000 and let's say 9,000, 9,999 or something. And step count over here is a variable that is the app storage. So this means that every time we are going to be setting up the value of step count, it is going to override the value in the app storage. Now, make sure, and this is important, that you have the actual target for your extension being selected. All right. And I don't know if you actually have to run the app again or not, but we can try it out. But make sure that the extension is actually selected, because if you don't have the extension selected, it's not going to work as expected. All right. So right now it's saying 5077. If I open the app, now you can see the new button which is saying update steps. I'm going to click on update steps, and I'm going to go back, and you can see that it is 5547. All right, let's see, 7801. So you can see definitely these steps are actually changing as soon as I change it. So this is proving that it will update the steps when the steps actually updates. Now on the actual device, when you are running, I have found some issues that the steps were not updating unless you select the target, which is just walking extension. But if I don't select this target, and if I just run the actual iOS app, then I will see that the steps are actually not updating. So if I go over here and run it on the app, run it on the phone, you'll see that I can see the steps and I can click it multiple times. And right now it's saying 5951. And since the app is the one that is actually running, so even if I open up this, let's see if that updates. So even if I open this up with the actual steps, it's actually not changing because the current target that is running right now is iOS. So there might be some bug, or maybe I'm doing something wrong, but it only works correctly if I actually change the target to the extension and then I run it. Then I can go ahead and update the steps and I can see in real time that it is actually updating. But anyway, hopefully this will give you an idea of how to create a widget which can display information from the app groups, and it is sharing the same information, that the information that we stored in the app groups from our iOS app is the one that is being displayed in the widget. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my courses on Udemy. I have a brand new course which is SwiftUI Declarative Interfaces for any Apple device. This is the most comprehensive course available on Udemy. You can actually see that this is around 17.5 hours, the longest course and the most comprehensive complete course on SwiftUI anywhere. You can see that we start with creating and combining views, building list and navigation. Then we even dive into the MVVM design pattern, learning how to use MVVM design pattern to create our next SwiftUI applications. I'm also covering the core data integration and also Swift recipes, which includes building a rating view, downloading images, and now I'm also covering all the Swift 2.0 changes. You can see there are a lot of changes coming up. We're already over an hour of changes and I keep on adding new things. The best way to get this course is check out the description of YouTube, and in the YouTube description you will not only find a link to the SwiftUI course, but you will also find many different links for all of my courses. And I would really appreciate if you want to show the support, then check out my other courses. I just released another course on Vapor 4, which allows you to write Swift applications or APIs using Swift on the server and on the cloud, which is an amazing course. So definitely check that out. I really hope that you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for your continuous support.